Welcome to Revenge Report. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let's dive in. I was on my back under Unit 4, tightening a bolt on the diesel coupling when his damn boots stopped just inches from my head. I didn't need to look. I knew the scuffed steel toes, the scowl breathing down from above. My father. He didn't say a word at first, just stood there while I finished the turn. I slid out, wiped my hands, and there he was. Hard hat off, jaw set, staring like I'd dented his truck. Then he snapped. "A grease monkey doesn't belong in a control seat," he shouted. The whole garage froze. The air felt like metal. Everyone looked at me. Even the new kid dropped his socket wrench. I didn't say a damn thing. I just wiped my palm on my thigh and walked, slow, steady, right past him. Crossed the bay floor, climbed into the command rig, and shut the door. I flipped the ignition to auxiliary, hit the diagnostics, ran the full startup sequence, fluid levels, brake calibration, routing sync. Like I'd done it in secret for years, because I had. When I reached for the harness, my sleeve pulled up, and the ink on my forearm caught the light. RCE 7-17. The room went dead quiet. No clanks, no hiss of air brakes, just silence. He saw it. He stared like it punched him. I saw his mouth open, then nothing. 12 years. He'd kept me buried in this garage like I was nothing more than a socket set with boots. Called me tech-savvy like it was a compliment. Said I didn't have the instinct for routing, and all that time I carried the truth on my skin. My supervisor, Ronnie, stepped forward, eyes locked on my father. "We need a certified backup to drive the convoy through the canyon," he said. He didn't hesitate. He knew. He'd known for months, maybe longer. I clicked the final check, pulled the belt across my chest, and locked in. Didn't ask for permission, didn't look for approval, just fired up the engine and rolled the rig forward like it had always been mine. Quick note, before we go on, which city or country are you watching from? The side mirror caught my father's face as I passed. Pale, set, hands clenched. He'd spent over a decade making sure no one ever saw me as more than a wrench turner. Now the entire crew watched me pilot the command truck straight out of his shadow. And I didn't say a damn word. I eased the rig into the lineup while the rest of the convoy loaded up. No one said anything to my face, but I felt the heat of their stares. People who'd worked next to me for years, suddenly acting like I'd grown a second head. Ronnie walked up to my window. "Leads out sick, food poisoning, you're up." I just nodded. The radio in my cab crackled with chatter. Half of it static, the rest confusion. "Wait, Zara's driving lead? Is this a joke? Since when is she even certified?" I flicked the volume down. Let them run their mouths. We had cargo to move, deadlines to hit, and a storm system pushing in fast from the north. The loading lights shifted from amber to green. That was my cue. I throttled forward, took point, and gave a short two-beep confirmation as I cleared the yard. The canyon waited 30 miles east, and once we passed mile marker 10, there was no turning back. In the mirror, I spotted my dad in the follow car, riding silent in the rear, exactly where he hated being. I didn't need to see his face. I could feel the weight of his glare, like the truck was something he built, and I'd stolen it out from under him. About 12 miles out, the terrain started to shift. Pavement narrowed, shoulder disappeared, and the wall of the canyon crept up on our left. On the right, a straight drop, no guardrail, no second chances. I flipped my radio to channel 3. "Convoy, hold formation, lanes tightening, speed down to 30, front clearance holding at 7 feet, 6 inches. "Copy," came a voice behind me. "Zara, you sure about the clearance?" I leaned forward, scanned the overhang with my eyes, then confirmed with the sensors. "Sure as hell am. Stay tight." We drift, we die. Silence. Then a quiet "copy that" from 2 rigs back. The rain started light but turned mean in less than 5 minutes. I switched on the wipers, adjusted traction, and scanned the sky patterns on the external dash monitor. Wind gusts up to 35. Flash flood watch in place. Terrain ahead was marked unstable from last week's rock slide. I tapped the screen, queued up a backup route just in case. Didn't need to use it yet, but I had it locked. "Canyon wind's picking up," I said into comms. "We get cross shear near turn 6. Stay left of center line, but don't push shoulder." A younger voice broke in. "Cody, I think. How the hell do you know this stuff?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The rig responded to every shift in terrain like it could hear my thoughts. I adjusted torque going into the first bend. kept RPMs just under 2,500, and let the grade pull us down slow and clean. We passed the first choke point, tight as hell, maybe a foot on either side of the mirrors. But we cleared it. Ronnie's voice came through. "You make that route once before?" "Not this one," I replied, "but I've made worse." A gust hit. Hard. I steadied the wheel with both hands and called it out. "Wind shear left to right, 12 degrees. Adjust accordingly." The rigs behind me stayed solid. No one wobbled, no one panicked. I could feel the shift through the radio silence. They were starting to trust me. Another mile passed. The worst stretch came into view, a tight left curve with a steep downgrade. Mud and rock lined the inner edge. On the outer side, nothing but air. "Approaching Dead Man Turn," I said. "Use low gear. Follow my track. One at a time." I went first, slow, steady. Right tire kissed the edge, but I didn't flinch. The truck purred underneath me, smooth and ready, like it had been waiting all this time for me to stop pretending I was just here to change its oil. After I cleared, I called back. "Line up, 2-minute intervals. You veer, you stall, you die." One by one, they followed. Not fast, not smooth, but they made it. By the time the last rig cleared the curve, the rain had lightened. We were still inside the canyon, but the worst of the climb was behind us. And still, my dad hadn't said a damn word. But I knew he was watching every move I made. And for the first time, there wasn't a single thing he could do about it. We crept past mile marker 12 just as the rain gave way to fog. That kind of thick, clinging mist that made every truck light blur into a soft glow. The radio had gone quiet, but the silence wasn't peace. It was attention. Dispatch broke first. "Zara Lockhart is driving lead?" Ronnie answered before I could reach for the mic. "Affirmative. She's certified." There was a pause. Then another voice joined. "Regional operations." "Lockhart, as in logistics coordinator's daughter?" Ronnie didn't touch that one. Neither did I. The signal dropped for a second, then came back in full force. "Did anyone verify her credentials?" That's when Cody chimed in from behind me, voice calm, casual. "You should have seen her drop into that dead man turn like she was giving it driving lessons." I stayed locked on the road, tires humming low and steady, but I could feel it. The shift. The crew wasn't questioning me anymore. Now it was everyone else trying to catch up. Over comms, chatter kicked up again. Somebody just sent a pic of her forearm to the regional thread. RCE. That real? Thought that unit was disbanded years ago. Shut down after that mountain op, right? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That Inc. RCE 717 was speaking louder than I ever could. Rapid convoy elite. Invitation only. High speed, high risk, high stakes routing. And I was one of the last to wear that badge. The truck behind me edged up a little closer, and Cody's voice came back, quieter this time. "You're running smoother than anyone I've seen, Lockhart." That hit different. He wasn't talking like a coworker anymore, more like a trainee who just realized his instructor wasn't bluffing. I gave the wheel a half turn and said into comms, "Hold that formation. Fog's thick but ground stable. We'll climb out of this pocket in 2 miles. No sudden shifts, no brave moves." They followed without hesitation. Behind us, in the follow car, my father hadn't said a word since we left the yard. Not through dispatch, not through private channel, nothing. But every now and then, I caught his face in my side mirror, eyes narrow, jaw set. That was a man watching his grip slip. Because for once, no one was asking his permission. No one was deferring to his word. They were watching me. We reached a slope that curved left into a series of blind dips. Normally, a lead would slow, radio back, ask for clearance from the top driver. Not me. I scanned the readings. My gut lined up with the slope's grade before the instruments confirmed it. "Hold steady," I called. "Grade shifts after dip 3. We'll see a slight left camber. Do not overcorrect." Every truck cleared it. Clean. Not a scrape, not a skid. Then a ping came through. Internal message from Regional HQ. "Confirm Lockhart. RCE trained. Field verification in progress." I didn't reply, just kept driving. But Ronnie's voice filled the channel again. "HQ's watching now, so smile for the cameras, crew." Someone behind us laughed. Not at me, around me. The kind of laugh you hear when tension breaks and people start believing they might actually pull something off. I checked my side mirror again. My father's eyes locked on mine. He didn't blink. He didn't have to speak. His look said enough. "You're not supposed to be here." But I was. and there wasn't a damn thing he could do to stop it. The comms flared one more time. "Storm's pulling west. You're clear to push pace to 35, came dispatch. "Copy," I said. "Adjusting now." I didn't look back again. I didn't need to. The whispers had spread, the ink had been seen, and no one could pretend they didn't see what I was doing with that truck, like I'd been born to do it. By the time we rolled back into the depot, the fog had lifted, but I couldn't breathe any easier. My boots hit the pavement, and I didn't even look at my father. Just walked straight to the locker room, peeled off the damp coveralls, and sat on the bench like the weight had finally caught up to me. I didn't go home that night. I stayed in the depot's bunk room, lights off, back against the wall. Sleep never came. I stared at the ceiling and thought about the first time I sat in a control rig. 12 years back. Fort Irwin, California. Military contracted training base disguised as a civilian logistics lab. They didn't recruit from resumes. They handpicked you. You got a letter, no explanation, no logo. Just a date, coordinates, and one line. Your mind solves what maps can't. I was 23, barely out of tech school, wrenching part-time on farm equipment and routing crosstown runs in Bakersfield for a local grain co-op. They saw something in how I handled unpredictable terrain and bottlenecks, said I could read roads like pressure veins, tactical routing instinct, they called it. We trained with blackout goggles, simulated mudslides, hostile takedown scenarios, convoy under fire, cargo critical, no backup. I passed every test. First in, last out. My father never showed up for graduation, didn't send a card, didn't even ask how it went. When I called him, excited, he said, "Logistics isn't for women who don't follow orders." That hit harder than anything I faced on the course. But I still got the ink. RCE 7-17. Class designation and year. It wasn't for flash. It wasn't for ego. It was to remind myself that I earned it, no matter who chose not to see it. After training, I submitted for high-risk deployment, storm zone routing along the Colorado Ridge lines. That kind of assignment only went to the top 1%, and I had the clearance. But I never got the call. I waited weeks, then months. Finally, a letter came in from my father's office, signed under Logistics Authority, reassigning me to West Coast equipment maintenance, depot duty, mechanicals only. He didn't tell me, didn't ask me, just moved me like I was a broken part off a shelf. When I confronted him, he didn't even flinch. "You've got natural mechanical talent," he said. "You should stick to what you're good at." I knew what that meant. I knew who he'd told. The moment I walked into the garage, they all treated me like I belonged under the rig, not behind the wheel. I should have fought it harder, but instead I told myself I was keeping the peace. Told myself I didn't need recognition, just steady work. Let him shape the story. Let him bury the truth. And over time, it got easy to play along. Grease on my hands, radio in my pocket. Eyes always drifting to the rigs I wasn't allowed to drive. That tattoo stayed hidden under my sleeve. My quiet badge of what I'd been, what I still was. I didn't talk about Fort Irwin. No one asked. He made sure of that. But after today, after every mile, every command, every tight turn handled clean, there was no way to keep it quiet. He knew it. And now, everyone else was starting to. I wasn't buried in grease because I burned out. I was buried because people like my father needed someone to disappear. It happened 6 months after I finished RCE training. We were running a multi-rig supply chain through eastern Nevada. 6 trucks, specialized cargo, high-speed transfer. I was lead routing analyst for the operation. Nothing moved without my say. Storm fronts were shifting. Rock instability reports coming in heavy from the north route. I ran simulations all night, checked SAT data twice. My call was clear. We reroute through the West Ridge, longer but stable. I sent the plan in, flagged it urgent. Next morning, I woke up to a new route order already processed and cleared. North Ridge, the one I said would collapse under weight, signed by senior command. One of the names was his. I called. I fought it. "They reviewed your notes," my father said over the line, "and we disagree. Stick to the route." I wasn't the one driving, just routing. But I knew what was going to happen before it did. They hit the pass just after noon. 32 minutes later, we lost contact with the last 2 rigs, gunfire, explosion, then nothing. It wasn't weather, wasn't a slide. It was an ambush. Somehow word got out that our convoy was coming through that pass. Wrong turn, wrong time, wide open. 2 men didn't come home. And suddenly, no one wanted to talk about who changed the route. I filed the protest the next morning, cited every warning, included time-stamped analysis, route comparison, even radio logs. Sent it to base, then regional. No reply. I followed up, again and again, still nothing. Finally, I cornered my father outside the admin tent during shift rotation. "They died because you overrode my call," I said. He didn't blink. "This isn't about blame, it's about performance." "You rewrote my plan," I snapped. "I want an investigation." His voice dropped low, cold. "You want to ruin your career? Because that's where this is heading." I remember staring at him like I was seeing a stranger. "2 men are dead," I said. "And you're falling apart," he replied. "Everyone sees it." That's when it hit me. He wasn't just covering up, he was repositioning, setting the story before I had a chance to speak. Within a week, the whispers started. Lockhart froze under pressure. She misread the terrain. She cracked. None of it was true, but he'd been in the game longer. He knew how to plant doubt. I fought for another month. Filed a final grievance. Tried to get a hearing. It got buried. So I walked. Not because I couldn't handle the job, but because they made sure I'd never be trusted again. I didn't quit driving. I quit believing the system cared what was true. I put in a reassignment request to depot work. Something small, out of the way. Just hands-on, no decisions, no command. My father called me into his office that same day. "You're lucky I'm even signing off on this," he said. "A real leader would have owned the mistake." "I didn't make the mistake," I told him. He looked at me like that didn't matter. "Perception is leadership," he said. That was the last real conversation we had before I stopped looking him in the eye. He clipped my wings and told the world I jumped. I stopped fighting, let him write the version that suited him. And for 12 years, I let that lie live. But now, after the canyon run, after the whispers, after the ink had been seen, there was no putting it back. That mistake cost 2 men their lives. And the man who made it? He still had his office, his title, his spotless reputation. For now. I didn't say a word to anyone after the run. Just clocked out, went home, and opened the backup drive I hadn't touched in years. It was still all there. Every routing model I built for the Nevada operation. The official orders I submitted. The last-minute override that sent those rigs to their deaths. I had copied everything back then, thinking I might still fight it. Instead, I let it collect dust. Not anymore. I spent that night and the next 2 digging through old logs, tracing signatures, highlighting change orders. It wasn't just that one mission. My father had a pattern, rerouting convoys with zero transparency, cutting corners, padding numbers. Every time someone questioned him, their assignment changed. Their file got reorganized. The records made them look like screw-ups. This wasn't a one-time cover-up. This was his system. On the 4th day, I took a personal day and drove 2 hours south to the regional headquarters in Fresno. I didn't call ahead, just walked in, asked for a legal liaison, and handed over the external drive without blinking. The woman they sent, Danielle Mertz, looked like she didn't have time for half the cases dumped on her desk. But the second she opened those files, her whole posture changed. "This all real?" she asked. "Cross-checked and time-stamped," I said. "You'll find signatures, overrides, message logs, all tied to one office." She didn't ask for my story twice. She didn't need to. 2 days later, she called me back. "You weren't wrong. He's been rewriting protocol, quietly but consistently, for years. I've got HR reports from drivers he blackballed. There's a pattern of suppression here." I didn't smile, didn't feel vindicated. I felt sick. She asked me to gather anything else I could. Discrepancies in convoy logs, deleted route simulations, internal messages flagged for deletion. I got to work. Nights, weekends, every break I had. I pulled backups off the depot server and matched them to field comms from the archive vault. He hadn't been careful. He thought no one would ever question him. That was his mistake. I wasn't chasing revenge. I wasn't interested in seeing him squirm. I just wanted the truth to breathe. 12 years of silence had suffocated everything I earned. And I wasn't the only one. There were at least 4 others, drivers, analysts, even one logistics planner, whose careers flatlined after crossing him. Danielle looped in regional compliance. Quietly, at first. Then it moved fast. She scheduled a preliminary review. Told me I'd be invited to speak. Said the documents were already enough to trigger a full audit. I kept showing up to work like nothing had changed. Wrenched bolts, logged service reports, took lunch in the corner by the vending machine, but I was listening. People were talking. Someone from HQ had shown up to review dispatch logs. A second investigator was seen pulling archived routing reports. The word irregularities started floating around the office like a bad smell no one wanted to name. I didn't bring it up. Didn't need to. My father did. Cornered me in the hallway between bays 2 and 3 one morning. "You know what you're doing?" he said, real low. "I do," I said. His eyes narrowed. "You think you're coming out clean in this?" I didn't flinch. "I never doctored a single log." He stepped closer. "You're playing with fire. You come after me, this whole place burns." I held his stare. "Then maybe it needs to." He didn't reply, just turned and walked off like the conversation didn't happen. But I'd seen it, just for a second, in his eyes. Fear, not of exposure, of losing control. He'd built a career on being the guy no one questioned. That was over now. I was coming out of the dispatch office the next morning when I saw him standing by the loading dock, alone, hands in his pockets, staring at the pavement like it might tell him what to say. I didn't slow down. "Zara," he called. I stopped, turned, but didn't step closer. He looked up, eyes tight, jaw clenched. "Don't do this." I crossed my arms. "You don't get to say that." "You think they're gonna make you a hero?" he said. "You think anyone walks out of this clean?" "It's not about me," I said. "It hasn't been for a long time." He stepped in like he wanted to drop his voice. "Keep it between us." "You're gonna blow up your career over one mistake?" "One?" I laughed. "You buried half this depot in lies and reroutes." "I kept things moving," he snapped. "I made this place efficient." "You killed careers." "I kept yours alive." I stared him down. "Number, you buried mine under grease and silence." He looked away, jaw working like he had something else locked in his throat. "You think they'll promote you after this?" he said. "They'll blacklist you. I can make that happen." There it was, the threat, finally spoken. I didn't blink. "You already made me disappear, 12 years ago." He shifted his weight like the words cut deeper than he expected. "Zara." He reached like he might touch my arm, but stopped halfway. "Let me fix this quietly. I'll talk to regional. We'll reassign, rewrite the logs. It'll be over." "You mean make it disappear?" I said. "That's what this needs." "No," I said. "That's what you need." He backed up half a step, like I'd slapped him. I didn't move. "You rewrote my history and handed me a wrench like it was a favor," I said. "You told everyone I cracked. You made sure no one remembered I was certified." He didn't argue, just stared at the pavement again. "I kept you safe," he said finally. "No," I said. "You kept me small." His shoulders dropped, just barely. But I saw it. He didn't reply. Just turned and walked away. Stiff, quiet, like someone heading to a grave they dug themselves. The next morning, I walked into the freight admin building at 9:01 a.m. Nothing welcoming about it. Stiff plastic chairs, dry air that scratched the back of your throat, fluorescent lights that made everybody look older than they were. I wore my depot uniform, sleeves rolled, tattoo showing. 3 people sat behind the long table, one from legal, one from operations, one from safety compliance, clipboards, tablets, 0 expressions. My father sat at the far end, suit jacket buttoned, tie straight. He nodded once when I entered, like we were about to talk budget projections. Danielle was already seated across from him, calm as ever, laptop open. She motioned to the seat next to her, and I sat. The legal rep kicked it off. "We're here to evaluate submitted claims regarding falsified routing orders, misrepresented qualifications, and misconduct during past logistics operations. Both parties will present." No one said good morning. No one asked how we were. They gave my father the floor first. He stood like he'd rehearsed for weeks. "For the record," he began, "my daughter, Ms. Lockhart, was never formally assigned to active routing duty within this depot. She lacked sufficient experience and, frankly, emotional stability." Danielle didn't react. "Neither did I," he went on. "After a breakdown during a high-risk assignment years ago, I placed her in a role better suited to her mechanical aptitude. This was a decision made for the safety of our operations." The operations rep raised a brow. "You made that decision unilaterally." "It was within my authority," he said flatly. He sat down like the case was closed. Danielle nodded to me. I stood. No one here is asking me to prove my emotional stability, I said. So let's talk about facts. I slid the first file across the table. Printed route plans, time-stamped logs, the override orders with his signature. I kept my voice steady. This was my original routing for the Nevada convoy. Safer pass. No threat assessments flagged. Here's the override signed by the same office that denied my protest. I laid out the next folder, 4 names. These are the drivers who either filed reports or asked for investigations into route tampering and were reassigned or demoted within weeks. I pulled up footage on the overhead monitor, grainy but clear, dash cam from the canyon run. My hands on the wheel. Voice-over comms calling terrain shifts, hazard zones, backup routes, clean execution, real-time decisions. You want to know if I'm qualified? I asked. Watch the road. No one said anything for a long stretch. Then the safety rep spoke. These simulator logs, she said, flipping through the data I'd printed, show top-tier performance across high-risk environments, all logged under your ID number. Correct, I said. These were never submitted for credential reinstatement? They were buried. She looked up at my father. By who? He didn't answer. The ops rep leaned forward. Sir, were you aware of her RCE certification? My father cleared his throat. It was never formally activated for this depot. Was it valid? He didn't speak. The legal rep tapped his pen once, then looked at me. Ms. Lockhart, is there anything else you'd like to say before we break? I stood quiet for a second, then said, This isn't about revenge. It's about making sure no one else gets buried because someone powerful decided they didn't like being challenged. The panel whispered among themselves. The tension wasn't loud, but thick. My father stared straight ahead, jaw tight. That cold, unreadable face he always wore when he knew he couldn't talk his way out. The legal rep finally looked up. We've seen enough. They stepped out for less than 10 minutes. When they came back, the air felt heavier. After reviewing the documentation and footage, we're reinstating Ms. Lockhart's qualifications effective immediately, the safety rep announced. I didn't move. The legal rep continued, We are also recommending disciplinary action against Mr. Lockhart for long-term procedural misconduct and data manipulation. Effective next quarter, he will be removed from senior coordination duties. Still, I didn't move. Danielle did. She closed her laptop. The room was quiet, no applause, no words of praise. Just the hollow weight of truth finally getting oxygen. One of the panelists looked directly at my father. If this isn't competence, he said, nodding toward me, what is? My father didn't answer. He couldn't. He stood, straightened his tie, and walked out without looking at me once. And I stayed seated, because for the first time, I didn't need to prove anything. I stayed at the depot long after the lights dimmed. No one else was around. Just the hum of distant compressors and the low tick of a cooling engine. Smelled like diesel and rust. Familiar, sharp, grounding. I sat on the metal steps outside Base 6. The same steps I used to eat lunch on, grease under my nails, sleeves down to hide the ink. I pulled off my watch, let the air hit my wrist. There it was, RCE 717. For years, I'd kept it covered like it was something shameful. Not because I was ashamed, because I didn't want to hear the lies again. I didn't want to listen to people explain who they thought I was. Now it just sat there, bare, simple, permanent. I wasn't angry, not anymore. What happened in that room earlier? It wasn't victory. It was clarity. I didn't need him to fall to find my footing. I'd already done that. The second I climbed into the command rig without asking, without flinching, I'd stopped living in the shadow he built. This wasn't a story of beating him. It was a story of walking right through everything he said I couldn't do, and doing it anyway. I leaned back, letting the steel press cold against my spine, and listened to the quiet. No applause, no spotlight. But for the first time in over a decade, I felt seen. Not for the mistake he made me carry, not for the wrench he forced into my hand, but for what I really was. Certified, capable, clear-headed. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the weight off. And now it was. The depot hadn't changed. Same cracks in the pavement. Same rigs lined up for tomorrow's hauls. But something in the air felt different. Not like the end of a fight. More like the start of one I didn't have to fake. The sun hit the yard sharp the next morning. Not warmer. Just clearer. Like someone scrubbed the haze off the sky overnight. I walked through the gate before the crew call. Boots steady, shoulders loose. The colonel from Regional Ops stood waiting by the dispatch door, hands behind his back, clipboard tucked under one arm. He didn't waste time. "You Lockhart?" he asked. I nodded. He stepped forward and shook my hand with a grip that said he already knew. "There's a seat waiting," he said. "Don't waste it." That was it. No speech, no back patting. He turned and walked off, already moving toward the next problem on his list. I stayed put for a second, then moved down the truck line, row after row of idling rigs. Same machines I'd wrenched, bled on, cursed under. But now they looked different, not like work I was assigned, like choices. Every one of them a door I'd been locked out of, and now the locks were off. I paused at Unit 4, the same one I'd been under when this whole thing cracked open, rolled up my sleeve, let the sun hit the tattoo. Clear, uncovered, mine. I didn't look around, but I caught movement in my peripheral. A few crew nodded. One gave a short, low whistle of respect. Others turned away. Didn't matter. I wasn't here to collect applause. I had already done what needed doing, with no permission, no introduction, no backup. That was enough. I climbed into the command rig like I'd been doing it my whole life. No hesitation, no eyes on me but the windshield in front. I didn't need a new title or a framed certificate. The road was still the road, and I was still the one who could read it. There was work to be done, quiet, clean, steady, exactly how I liked it.